Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak, your podcast. Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 26th of November. I'm Caroline Hepker in London. Coming up today, Chancellor Rachel Reeves prepares to deliver her long-trailed budget in what could be a day of reckoning for the government. Exclusive Bloomberg reporting reveals the US presidential envoy Steve Witkoff advised Russia on how to pitch the Ukraine peace plan to President Trump. Plus, casting a wide net after gold and diamonds, Moscow turns its attention to Africa's trove of fish. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. Rachel Reeves will set out her budget later today as she tries to win over her party, the public and the markets. Britain's Chancellor is widely expected to set out a range of tax hikes to fill a £30 billion fiscal hole a year after raising levies and promising that she wouldn't come back for more. PIMCO senior advisor Rupert Harrison told Bloomberg Radio this long list of taxes comes with risks.
If there were easy, predictable, cost-free tax rises sort of sitting around, they would have been picked up by previous chancellors. And also, the predictability of the revenues is less. So I think we've already seen that, for example, some of the measures around non-domiciles and the ending of the non-dom regime in the UK. I think there are still big question marks about whether that has raised the revenues that were predicted.
Rupert Harrison speaking there, who helped to draft George Osborne's 2012 Omnishambles budget and sees some similarities to this year. Elusive economic growth has helped make Rachel Reeves the most unpopular chancellor since polling began, with gilts also hitting multi-decade highs. Reeves is hoping markets will reward her budget with a decline in government borrowing costs, but investors have been hedging to protect against currency volatility. Now, Reform UK's leader Nigel Farage has rejected claims that he made racist comments as a teenager after an investigation rocked his attempts to paint Reform UK as a moderate party. Several of the popular politician's classmates have accused him of racism, bullying and anti-Semitic abuse when he attended Dulwich College 49 years ago. Journalists asked Farage about the claims at a Reform rally in Wales.
Can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Have I ever been part of an extremist organisation or engaged in direct, unpleasant personal abuse, genuine abuse on that basis? No.
Nigel Farage there. Reform UK are the most popular political party in Britain as polls stand, with Farage being talked about as a potential next Prime Minister of the UK. Bloomberg has learned that US presidential envoy Steve Witkoff held a phone call last month with a senior Kremlin official to suggest they work together on a peace plan for Ukraine similar to Gaza, and that Vladimir Putin should raise it with Donald Trump. In an October 14th phone call that lasted a little over 5 minutes, Witkoff advised Yuri Ushakov, Putin's top foreign policy aide, on how the Russian leader should broach the issue with President Trump. His guidance included suggestions on setting up a Trump-Putin call before Volodymyr Zelensky's White House visit later that week, and using the Gaza agreement as a way in. And according to transcripts obtained by Bloomberg News, Witkoff advised Russia on how to bring up the topic with President Trump. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. However, asked about Witkoff's approach while on Air Force One, President Trump said he hadn't reviewed the call, but that he heard it was a standard negotiation.
He's got to sell this to Ukraine. He's got to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's what a deal maker does. You got to say, look, they want this. You've got to convince them with this. And I would imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine, because each party has to give and take.
President Trump added that his special envoy Steve Witkoff will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, likely next week. In a separate social media post on Tuesday, President Trump wrote that there are only a few remaining points of disagreement, with tremendous progress, in his words, made over agreeing a deal to end Russia's war with Ukraine. Now, White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett has emerged as the front-runner to be the next Federal Reserve Chair. Bloomberg understands that the economist would be a close ally to President Trump and implement his approach to interest rate cutting were he to lead the central bank. Speaking on Fox News, Hassett said he would accept the position.
If he were to ask me to be Fed chair, then of course I would have to say yes, because I want to serve my country and I want to serve my president. But we'll see how it goes. There are a lot of great candidates.
Kevin Hassett speaking there. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has run the selection process, interviewing candidates to replace Powell. In a statement, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "Nobody knows who the president will choose. The Fed pick will also need to be confirmed by the Senate." Treasuries rallied, pushing the 10-year yield below 4% for the first time in a month, on news that Hassett is a favourite for the post. And lastly, Apple is set to take back its crown as the world's largest smartphone maker. That's after the latest iPhone release inspired a spate of upgrades. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo has more now.
For the first time in more than a decade, Apple is poised to once again become the world's #1 phone seller. That's according to technology analysis firm Counterpoint Research, who say the company is benefiting from cooling US-China trade relations and a depreciating dollar. Their figures show Apple surpassing longtime rival Samsung's sales growth by more than 5% this year. The tech giant said last month that sales are growing faster than anticipated, with the holiday quarter poised to approach a record $140 billion in revenue. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
Those are our top stories for you. In the market, some momentum back in global equity markets. We're up by 0.3% for the All Country World Index. Asia stocks also rising for a third day. There are more bets now on a December Fed rate cut. US and European stock futures are up. We also had European stocks gaining yesterday. Deutsche Bank now putting a price target, S&P 500, to reach 8,000 by the end of 2026. Treasury yields this morning trading at 4.01, so actually just above the 4% mark, up 1.5 basis points right now. We have a weaker dollar and the pound is strengthening ahead of the budget. We're going to bring you more news on the UK Chancellor's second ever budget in a moment, and also why Russia has set its sights on fishing off the coast of Africa. But before we get to those stories, there's always something that catches my eye. And today is recipe writers who say that AI-generated recipe slop is ruining cooking advice online. All of this ahead of Thanksgiving, ahead of the festive period where no doubt you'll all be searching for your best recipes. Apparently, AI can generate summaries that distort the basics, according to these recipe writers, of their creations. For example, the Easy Peasy foodie writer, she says that her tried and tested recipes are being garbled. Bloomberg's David Alba and Carmen Arroyo writing really quite heartbreakingly about recipe writers who say that their vetted recipes are either being hidden by the flood of AI, or the AI-generated replicas of their recipes are appearing online, or even that their images are being altered into AI fodder. All of this ahead of the first ever holiday season where consumers are starting to trust, it seems, the AI answers that they look at when it comes to recipes. Anyway, that was a story of note for me. Right, let's get into, though, more serious topics, shall we? Today, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is due to deliver what she has said will be a fair budget. It's likely to be a contentious package of tax increases and spending restraint to close a fiscal hole of as much as £30 billion after a period of intense speculation. Will it reassure markets that the government won't be back in the same straits next year? Joining me now is Bloomberg UK politics reporter James Walcott for more. Good morning, James. What is Reeves expected to announce at lunchtime today?
I've been inspired by your recipe chat, Caroline. So I'll tell you, if you do 12 months of policy U-turns and an economic downgrade and bake it, you get a raft of tax rises. We reported yesterday in two big Bloomberg scoops that on one hand there's going to be a tourist tax that local mayors will levy. On the other hand, a bank tax is off the table. And this adds to this big picture of the biggest levers, which we thought a few weeks ago were in contention, the likes of income tax, VAT, national insurance, have been ruled out. This was a big Bloomberg scoop from 2 weeks ago, that actually the economic forecasts have improved, and we'll find that out when Rachel Reeves stands up later today. But the thinking now is that we're going to get a range of other taxes. I mean, the runners and riders are a mansion tax, a tax on high-value homes, a limit on how much you can put in your pension tax-free, sin taxes, the likes of gambling, alcohol, taxes on EVs, electric vehicles, as more people move to using greener transport, and a cut to the amount of cash you can put in your cash ISA versus a stocks and shares ISA. These are all some of the runners and riders, and they are by no means all. We are expecting quite a lot of quite punitive measures here. It's worth saying the past few weeks have been dogged by tax speculation, Caroline, but we will also hear two things that I think it's worth paying attention to in the budget later today. The economic forecasts of how the government and the OBR, the independent watchdog, think the economy is doing, and a political narrative. The budget is the moment the Chancellor, as the most senior sort of economic figure in the government, pulls together a narrative of how the government is doing and what it sees its economic future as. And the past 12 months have been undeniably bruising for Rachel Reeves. She has made big bets that last year was the last time she would be putting up taxes. She is now coming back and expected to be doing the same. And I will genuinely be quite curious to see how she ties that together in a narrative of what this Labour government is achieving.
The budget comes alongside the OBR forecasts, as you say. How important is that going to be?
Even more than usual, and they have become totemic because now each Chancellor has given themselves such limited headroom, Reeves being most of all, that the OBR's decree on how the economy is looking has now managed to catch out many previous Chancellors. Because we are expecting so many small, I say small, I'm talking £2 to £4 billion worth taxes to go up. How the OBR scores all of those will be crucial to how the markets react. And so we will all be paying quite close attention to what the OBR say, both when the Chancellor sits down, when they publish their technical documents, but also at their press conference later today as well.
And the reaction to the budget is something we'll be watching closely. Lots of risks. Any rewards?
I think survival is a good reward at this point for the Chancellor. She is in a trap of her own making, as the Bloomberg editorial this morning puts out. She's trying to keep on side the public, which has seen a massive polling drop, the markets with gilts at a multi-decade high, and Labour MPs, where in the past 3 weeks we have seen nearly open speculation about replacing the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So those are the three crucial constituencies to keep this Labour government on the road, and there are warning lights in all of them. So she faces a pretty impossible job going into this. However, she is still one of the most powerful politicians in the land, with a unheard of majority in Parliament and an ability to make political weather in this moment. I think this is the test of whether she can actually achieve that and keep the ship on the road and bring back economic growth to Britain, a country that has clearly wanted change in this election last year. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves now has to show that she can deliver it.
Yeah, we've already heard from quite a number of constituencies who are concerned, particularly business. It is rare to see the number of business voices that we have seen concerned about what is going to be in the budget. You know, the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, the British Chambers of Commerce, the hospitality sector, the motor manufacturing sector, they're all deeply concerned about what is going to be in the budget today.
There are two problems here. There is no easy way to put up taxes. But if you're going to do it, a large measure that affects everyone is a much more enforceable, much more easily measured way. That clearly was the thinking a few weeks out when the Chancellor got up in public on breakfast TV and gave a speech saying there were tough choices to come. There was then a massive sort of scandal, effectively, a few weeks back when it leaked that that was now off the cards. And we're seeing a series of smaller measures. The business reaction throughout this process has been, if you're coming for a series of smaller measures, you're going to upset small segments of the business community, and we are all going to say that this will hit us uniquely and will set back growth and will affect our hiring. And they have also said that last year you promised us at the CBI's annual conference, I say you, I mean Chancellor Rachel Reeves, that she would not put up taxes on business again. And so they regard this as broken promises, and some of them also regard it as bad economics. Whether they are right, the question for the Chancellor is, politically, could she have survived breaking what would have been a manifesto election pledge? And this is why I come back to this idea that there are no easy choices in this budget, but will the difficult medicine lead to a better economic future for the country and this government? That is the question that it's going to take us more than one day to answer.
Yeah. James, thank you so much for being with me. That is Bloomberg's UK politics reporter, James Wilcock. Thank you. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this. Now, sanctions hit Russia has stepped up its courting of African governments with offers of military cooperation, weapons, grain, fertilizers, and that has extended to fishing and data on fish stocks. Joining us now is senior reporter Agnieszka de Souza, in charge of Bloomberg's Business of Food weekly newsletter. Agnieszka, good to speak to you on this in-depth bit of Bloomberg reporting about the, quote, Great African Expedition. This is a Russian project that's taken a few years to map out Africa's fish resources. What exactly have they been doing?
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me. So, Great African Expedition is a project sanctioned by President Vladimir Putin to help his African allies map out their fish resources. Fish is a very, very important element of many of those countries' economies. It's pretty much a strategic asset for them, as the data is, but at the same time, they do not have resources to monitor those stocks on a regular basis, and they need them in order to manage their resources. So Russia offered to help. It's an example of so-called scientific diplomacy, something we saw during the Cold War, and Russia is reviving it in a way.
So then why is Russia interested in fisheries in Africa and then kind of cooperation in this area if it's part of a diplomatic push? I mean, West Africa's also seen a great deal of overfishing, of illegal fishing off the coast of those countries.
Yeah, that's right. On the one hand, as I said, it's a soft power tool, but at the same time, Russia hasn't hidden the fact and has been pretty open about it that they hope to extend cooperation in this area. They hope to actually obtain agreements, concessions from those countries in order to fish in those waters. So, on the one hand, they are assisting, but at the same time, they would like to take advantage of some of those resources. It's also something that Russia has been is one of the biggest seafood exporters. It is a source of export revenue, source of hard currency. So yes, if they can search for new areas to fish, that can definitely help them at a time when sanctions are still in place.
And there's been a huge global surge, hasn't there, in terms of demand for fish products and, for consumers around the world. The consequences, though, for these African nations, what have you and the team been reporting on there?
Yes, indeed. It's a very, very sensitive location, especially the West African region. Resources there, it's still a very, very diverse area in terms of fish species, but at the same time, it's not a very well policed place. There are no resources to actually go in the sea and catch illegal, unregulated fishing. So that area has been the epicenter of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, costing these countries billions of dollars in lost revenue. And at the same time, the presence of international trawlers, because essentially it has been a magnet for so many countries to fish in those waters, that had consequences and resulted in depleted waters, and that with a result that the prices have gone up. It has affected local food security, and it has affected local employment.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.